Good morning.
Morning.
How are you? Welcome to Columbia's campus. I am Professor Marcellus Blount, and I'm an English professor, an associate professor in the Department of English and Comparative Literature, but I'm also a faculty member in African American Studies, and on behalf of the Institute for Research in African American Studies, I welcome you. I had the pleasure last year of being the acting director of the Institute. One of the things that I was able to do as acting director was to think about programming that we would do for this year. And I was very excited when Professor Warren came to me with the idea of sponsoring this third conference on the state of black workers in America. Now, what we do here at Columbia in this elite, august institution is to think about the ways in which this academic institution interacts with the world at large. We are not a space that's marked off simply by privilege, but we exist in a complex world of society and capital and ideology. It's important for us to be able to think about how the state of black workers today, and today's conference, of course, signals the release of two groundbreaking reports, that we can bring together black organizers with academics to explore research questions and innovative organizing strategies as we bring together the world of the academy with the world at large to think about what we in the academy might have to offer, but also to be fully aware that we are part of a larger system of the economic and social and political organization of our world, and that we as academics won't allow ourselves to be marginalized, but we as academics also will insist upon seeing the state of black workers clearly. So thank you very much, and I'd like to introduce Professor Dorian Warren.
Thank you, Professor Blount, and welcome. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
There's more coffee in the back. I know it's early. Happy May Day.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us here at Columbia University, and I have lots of thank yous before we get started. The first, though, is to, in the back there, Sharon Harris. Please, Sharon, wave. Sharon has made all of this possible today, and we wouldn't be here but for her work and the work of Sean Mendoza at the Institute for the Research for African American Studies here at Columbia. Thank you, Marcellus. I want to also thank the current chair, who can't be here today, Sam Roberts, for supporting this conference. This is the third in a series of conferences on the state of black workers in America. The first two I went to were in Washington, D.C., organized by Marc Bayard, who you'll hear from in a few minutes. And after the second one at Georgetown, Marc and I were having a conversation about, well, what happens now? And so we conspired and plotted, and I said, well, let me see if we can get another conference up at Columbia in New York. And so here we are. So Marc, thank you for your leadership around all of these issues around black workers. And as you know, there are two reports being released today. You should have one hard copy. We gave you the other one digitally. So send it around. Someone is tweeting it right now, my phone. Groundbreaking reports. The first on Black Workers Matter, but the second one, I think, and it's just absolutely lovely. I think I heard Janice Fine saying this is a coffee table book. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous report, and Still I Rise, about black women labor leaders, which is just a phenomenal report. So I want to thank Marc and his collaborators for producing such quality work. You'll hear the details in a few minutes. Last but not least, I want to thank two other people. My right hand, who's in the back, Shea Crowder, who some of you probably checked in with, and then Susan Weefalt from the Discount Foundation, who has been the funder in the world of philanthropy, and there are not a lot of labor funders, first of all, people that fund worker organizing, but especially black worker organizing. And Susan has been the leader in the world of philanthropy on pushing foundations, yes. Without her leadership, we also would not be here, and you also would not have these reports, and more importantly, the organizers on the ground all over the country wouldn't have the resources they need to improve the lives and conditions of black workers. So thank you, Susan. And with that, I will bring up Marc, who will provide some introductory remarks, and then thank you for being so patient, panel. We will get to you in a few minutes. Welcome and thank you.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Marc Bayard, and I am a fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies, and I am also the director of the Black Worker Initiative at the Institute for Policy Studies, and I am so amazingly happy and excited to have all of you here today. This conference and these reports have been, I would say, a year in the making, and from conception to reality, and there are so many great friends and colleagues who have helped us along the way in this audience, and it's so great to see all of you here today. As Dorian said, it's exciting to be here on May Day. It's exciting to be celebrating workers, to be celebrating worker rights, to be celebrating black workers. It's a great opportunity and a great moment for all of us today. And so I'm amazingly pleased to be here. And even the title of this conference, the state of black workers in America, we were very conscious in developing these conferences not to alienate any other workers in America, but to really focus in and uplift, the important struggle and story of black workers in America. And so it's so exciting to be working with Columbia University on this. It's so exciting to be working with the African American Studies Department and its great scholars. As Dorian pointed out, so exciting to be working with a great staff here. I mean, they really, Sharon did an amazing job helping me and others on this conference, and I really do want to give her her credit and due. And we have a phenomenal panel that'll be starting us off in a few minutes, and I'm so excited that they're all here. And so with that, so much has been said. All of you have the two phenomenal reports. There's going to be so much discussed about them today, so I'm not going to say too much more about them, except that I thank everyone who has participated in the reports, the 27 women who we photographed, the over 460 women who did the interviews for And Still I Rise, all of the people that participated in Black Lives Matter, Black Workers Matter. It was a phenomenal feat to get so many writers and editors and activists to take time out of their amazingly busy schedules to do this work. And finally, of course, I'd be remiss not to mention that all of this work is being done in the context of places like Ferguson and South Carolina and New York City and Baltimore. When we conceived of writing these reports, we didn't realize how much the economic justice agenda and the racial justice agenda needed to be intertwined. So it's just so important. I mean, we talk about cities like Baltimore and cities like Detroit, but we also remember that those cities were major union towns less than 30, 40 years ago. And black folks had a good middle class life based upon the public sector and the private sector. So you cannot take away that critical element of history and only focus in on the snapshots of today. And these reports are really there to help fill the gaps in that history, but also to really pave a path forward. So again, amazingly excited to be here. I'm so happy that everyone has come. I am going to introduce Teresa Younger, who is the president and CEO of the Ms. Foundation for Women. Teresa is going to be our moderator of our And Still I Rise panel. And Teresa has been a great colleague and friend as I've talked to her about the And Still I Rise report a lot over the last 6 to 8 months, really just getting her thoughts and visions as to how we could make this even better and stronger and make it much more of a mainstream piece to reach as many women around the world and in the US as possible. And so it's great to have an ally and a friend here in Teresa. Teresa has been on the front lines of some of the most important battles for women's rights She most recently served as the Executive Director of the Connecticut General Assembly Permanent Commission on the Status of Women. And as I said, she is now the President and CEO of the Ms. Foundation. So let me turn it over to Ms. Teresa Younger.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, one moment. I forgot to mention that Susan Weefald, who we've also talked about quite a bit, Susan and the Discount Foundation have been instrumental, and I wanted Susan to come up to say a couple of words, and then we'll turn it over to Teresa to start the panel. So Susan, thank you for being such a friend, an ally, a colleague, and a visionary in terms of really making this work around Black worker organizing come to life.
Well, thank you, Mark. I thought I was going to get away with not having to get up here and speak. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the Discount Foundation. Throughout its entire existence, the Discount Foundation has directed its funding to organizing that builds power among poor people and people of color. In 2009, the board began to explore ways to more explicitly fund African American organizations and constituencies. Unsatisfied with its own history of funding Black movement building, the board also felt that the broader economic justice movement paid insufficient attention to Black workers and the racial inequity in the labor market. After making a few pilot grants aimed at addressing structural unemployment, beginning in 2012, Discount named Black worker organizing as one of its 4 funding priorities. In our most recent funding round last week, I'm very proud to say that out of 27 grants that were made, 13 fall within our Black worker organizing area, and 10 of those have Black executive directors. This will be our final set of grants. After 38 years, we are spending down, and we will close our doors this summer. So it was with a certain amount of urgency that I expressed my hope that other funders, those in this room and others across the country, will continue supporting our grantees and other organizations that are organizing Black workers. Over the last 3 years, I've been repeatedly inspired by the power and possibility of the Black women and men who are joining together to organize collectively and demand change. I've also heard repeatedly from the directors of our grantee organizations about the challenges of raising those funds, as well as the concern that being explicit about a racial equity lens will make it even harder to raise money. And yet 8 of my foundation colleagues, along with the AFL-CIO, have joined with us and contributed to produce our report, Black Workers Matter, as well as contribute to this conference and other briefings we will hold to get the word out about the report and the importance of Black worker organizing. You will find their names in the acknowledgement section of our report. I am hopeful that this is an indication that there is an opening in philanthropy to support race-conscious efforts to organize Black workers and communities. I am grateful for their partnership and the partnership of our co-sponsors, and I look to all of you to carry this work forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I just have to throw in that Susan is an alumni member of the Ms. Foundation for Women, and so it's with great pride that we have our affiliation. First off, I want to thank Marc and Kim for inviting me and the Ms. Foundation to be part of this morning's kickoff conversation to a day-long opportunity to really have dialogue. If anything we've seen in the past few months, 8 to 10, is that we are lacking in dialogue, real, open, and honest dialogue about where we come from. So I'll point out the obvious to you. I am a Black woman. And with me today are other Black women. Let's not be so naive as to say that race is not a conformity that's been placed upon us by society, but race is how we're going to talk about the conversation this morning, and gender is how we're going to talk about the conversation this morning because we have that opportunity. 10 months ago, I joined the Ms. Foundation for Women as coming from the grassroots, understanding organizing, and recognizing that this was an opportunity we may never get in our lifetimes, and little did I know what was going to be going on, not just in the United States, but across the world, in a need to have conversations that's open and honest. And so this morning, we are going to have an opportunity to talk with these amazing women on this panel a little bit about one of the most beautiful reports I've ever seen or read, and then we're going to have an opportunity to hear from all of you. We're going to reserve some time at the end of this conversation to give people an opportunity to stand up and tell their stories, if they'd like to, of their involvement in unions, in organizing, in the importance of Black women's voices and leadership in this role. I want to start off this morning's presentation with a short video, and then I will introduce our speakers, and we will go forward from there. So, sure. Thank you.
And still, I rise. Power, power, power.
I grew up in New York around unions, but didn't know what they were. And one of my aunts, who worked for the county hospital, was a member of AFSCME-CSEA in New York. That was my very first experience with unions. There's a certain level of effectiveness that Black women have when it comes to organizing.
We have to start with organizing and then passing laws, because laws are important. Without them, it makes very hard for us to do our work.
You can move with a fist, like togetherness, being unity. Everybody being on the same page. I think that's what moves us. When you're solo, it's no good. You can't, your voice will never be heard. You have to be together as one, a team.
I grew up in a union family. My earliest memory of unions was when I was 7 years old. As far as I can remember, there's always been kind of this union, this collective, this group of people that fought for each other.
I mean, the work, first of all, I want to credit my mom, because growing up, she always helped everyone else, and that the best thing that we take from life is what we do for others.
The labor movement is a social movement, and the whole goal is to work towards the good and the benefit of all.
A labor movement has to be part of a greater social justice movement. You know, you just can't fight with your boss. That's not what this is about. And what we've seen is, as the labor movement has become more active, they have gained from this.
And those are the moments that make me uncomfortable, but also let me know that I have purpose, that we all have purpose, to step in there and try to figure out how to bridge that divide and move forward.
Promise, promise.
Historically, Black women are some of the first workers in this country, right? Both working inside the home and doing really tough labor outside the home, particularly agricultural labor. And so, you know, you would think, right, that Black women would be core to a vision for a new labor movement that is really rooted and grounded in the experiences of those who are at the margins. So that's why I'm so grateful for the Domestic Workers Alliance, and I'm hoping that the rest of the labor movement is able to catch up.
Basically, we see a lot of people who come in who have been discriminated against, sometimes just because they're at the workplace and they're doing low-wage work. Sometimes they working, doing a lot of overtime, and they don't get paid either. And as we go into the community and run workshops about workers' rights and tenants' rights, they start to come in and say, hey, this is happening to me. How can we fix it?
Voices, voices.
First thing we have to do, just to be a little bit of a doctor here, is acknowledge we have a problem. You know, that although there is a Dr. Lewis International Vice President, Chair of SEIU Healthcare, we're not in a post-racial union society. We still have, there are several other talented, genius people that we're missing out on, just because we have a structure that doesn't acknowledge, feed, nourish, open up the space for that leadership to grow.
I think we have to have in this country bold, creative leadership, or we won't make it as workers. We have got to have leaders that are not timid. leaders that can take a stand on issues in the workplace and issues in the community. And our movement, I hope for our movement that we see this, that we move out of this kind of very small notion of what a labor movement is, and then we move into a notion that understands that a labor movement is part of a social justice movement. So when something happens in the plant, you're there. And when something happens in Ferguson, you are there in full colors and in full motion.
They tried to think long term in terms of the next generation of leadership for this union, and I was just one of those pieces. And we're seeing a lot of those pieces take shape every day in our union.
I do consider myself to be a part of the labor movement, but I guess the question is, does the labor movement consider me to be a part of it?
Still I rise.
Amazing. Thank you. That was just was wonderful. I said to Kim this morning, and I'll introduce her in just a moment, which I think everybody knows her, but I said, last night when I was preparing my notes for today, I went back and read.
Forgive that.
That's okay. I went back and read And Still I Rise. So I invite you to open your books just for a moment and find the page that has Maya Angelou's poem, And Still I Rise. It's like the third page in your book. And I want you to just take a moment to read it. I will do no justice in reading it to you, but take just a moment to read the words and then keep that in context as we have this conversation this morning. Because when I read the words last night, it brought tears to my eyes. A woman in an amazing voice. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the dirt, very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. That's just amazing. This morning we are joined by an amazing group of panelists that I want to introduce you to. Their bios are completely in your program, and then I'm going to talk just briefly before we go and ask them some questions. This morning I have next to me Valerie Irwin, who is the Executive Director of Participatory Democracy Project, which we were just kind of going through how long a title that is in reality. At the Center for Working Family, Valerie's broad leadership for the center's policy engagement and has expanded its reach to include 8 states and the District of Columbia. The Center for Working Families played a vital policy role in supporting efforts for debt-free higher education, curbing climate change, and working on green jobs, universal standards for workers' rights, voting rights, public financing, and criminal justice reform and women's economic security. Her leadership is something that I have heard long about, and it is an honor and a privilege to call her my sister in these activities that we are doing to make change happen. Valerie believes that electoral politics and political engagement can converge to create a space for change. Her work as a legislator and a policy leader has focused to connecting government, business, education, and
education and the safety net to serve the needs of all families and give a voice to those underserved in our government. Her full bio I will make available to you, but I want to go ahead and move on and thank Valerie for stepping in today and being part of this conversation. The next person I want to introduce you to needs no introduction. Many of you know Kimberly Freeman Brown. She was the president of KFB Consulting LLC. I had the opportunity of just meeting her only about 6 months ago in the midst of this project. And I feel like I've known the work that you've done for a long time. She her company is a boutique management consulting firm that supports some of the foremost progressive leaders in advocacy and political organizations in this nation. Her clients, including the Advancement Project, the Center for Working Families, and DEMOS, have utilized her expertise as an organizational development and leadership development initiatives, as well as an executive coach. How nice it is to be able to have an executive coach that might look just like you. Prior to launching her firm in 2012, she served as the executive director for American Rights at Work, a national labor policy organization that merged with Jobs for Justice in 2012. On occasion, Kimberly returns to her roots as a writer and a communications strategist, which she has done in helping to put together And Still I Rise, and it is a phenomenal document. So thank you so much for your work on that. Also with us this morning is a woman that I was very excited to meet, Dr. Tony Lewis. Tony Lewis is a long-time has a long-time commitment to pursue social justice instilled by her family and 2 generations of legacy in union membership. As we heard her speak earlier, she is a graduate from Georgetown University School of Medicine, and she has joined the Committee of Interns and Residents, the largest physicians union in the SEIU, while completing her medical residency, and rose to a number of leadership positions within that union. From 2007 to 2010, Dr. Lewis served as the national president for CIR. There she worked for better hours, pay, benefits for medical residents. In 2010, she was named the chair of SEIU Healthcare, which has 1.1 million members. She also serves as an international president on the board of SEIU. Despite her experiences with SEIU, Dr. Lewis acknowledges that many African American women do not have the same opportunity to ascend in leadership positions within unions. Dr. Lewis knows the importance of helping to open leadership opportunities for people of color within the broader labor movement, at the same time working hard for the union that she loves. In the area of healthcare, one of the fastest growing areas in the country. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Also with us today, I'm going to say this wrong, and I'm so sorry. Perriette?
That's good.
Okay, Perriette Talley. She is the first woman to hold one of the top 2 offices in the Ohio AFL-CIO, which represents more than 500,000 workers in the fields ranging from construction to medicine. Talley is the first elected secretary-treasurer in 2002 and was re-elected in 2006, and before that she worked as the Ohio State Director for the AFL-CIO, where she worked with state federation and central labor councils to engage union affiliates in a variety of political organizing and legislative campaigns and activities. I will tell you, I watched this woman work her magic in Ohio State just a couple of years ago as she helped beat back and add the voice of women and communities of color to a conversation about the importance of the labor unions within the state of Ohio. And I watched with much appreciation at the time I was a state employee in the state of Connecticut. So I want to just thank you for all your amazing work. And that list of questions for you, just so you know, goes on and on and on and on. Next, I want to introduce you to a woman who I'm so thrilled is on this panel with us today, because I've had the opportunity in numerous times to work with her. Natalicia Tracy is a woman who immigrated to Boston from Brazil and has worked as a nanny since she was 17 years old. Natalicia knows the injustices faced by domestic workers, which are excluded from federal labor laws and protections, including the right for collective bargaining. More than 90%, an estimated 2 million domestic workers in the United States are women, and the majority of those women are women of color. And we know this to be true. And according to the National Domestic Workers Alliance, the nation's leading voice on domestic workers, by 2025, our nation will need at least 1.8 million additional caregivers to care for the aging baby boomers in this country. Today, she is the vice president of the board of directors of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and in addition to her leadership position with BIC, which is dedicated to safeguarding the rights of immigrants workers. When I worked with her in Connecticut, and she is continuing to do the work of getting a domestic workers' Bill of Rights passed in that state, she has done that in other states and has been at the forefront of those conversations. She's a doctoral candidate in sociology from Boston University. Is that going to... Yeah? Okay. It's just at the forefront of the efforts of local and national policies to protect domestic workers and labor rights and the domestic workers across the country. She's played a key role in Massachusetts, becoming the 4th state in the union to have a domestic workers' Bill of Rights, and is working in many other states to make that happen. At her core, she is an organizer. Her story chronicles the work she does both as domestic workers and within the broader labor movement, which also embraces an essential partnership of obtaining full labor rights for domestic workers. That is the group that we have with us today, and I'm so honored and thrilled to be sitting here with them. But, you know, one of the questions that comes up is, why are we having a conversation about black women in the labor movement? Why aren't we having a conversation about all women in the labor movement, or women of color in the labor movement? And I think those are valid questions, but you have to have a conversation from where you are. And black women in the labor movement is the key to the conversation we need to have, because what happens to black women in the labor movement happens to the rest of our society. And the data I'm going to let Kim get into in a moment, but understanding that the work being done and work that has been done by black women in this country is often unrecognized, unappreciated, and exploited work. And it has only been through union organizing that these voices have actually been able to come together. The income that black women have in their households is oftentimes not optional income. This idea that we had women who stayed home as an option to working, and the man went out to work, was not an option in many black households and hasn't been for generations. Black women are 3 times more likely than white women to be single head of households. And that number has not changed. The conversation about the income gap, not wealth gap, but the conversation around the income gap for black women is unbelievable. It gets worse, of course, for other populations, but black women are making 64 cents to the dollar that white people are making. Black men are making 78 cents to the dollar. The income gap that we are talking about has created a wealth gap amongst black families, and the heads of those black families are black women. We know that women make up nearly 51% of the workforce, and black women make up the largest percentage of workforce participation in this country. We have relied on areas like the public sector to help us reach greater levels of equality in the workplace. It should be known that as people were talking about the war on women, they should have been talking about the war on black women. I've said this before, and I will say it, and I don't have any data to support it, but I honestly believe that the war on women was targeted to black women based out of fear. And we can have a whole conversation on that on another day. But there is a disproportionate amount of women of color, African American women, and communities of color that are working in the public sector arena. When the debacle of the Great Recession happened, those that were most impacted on every single level were black women. because the public sector was attacked. And who are those serving in the public sector? Secretaries, teachers, nurses. Those were all jobs that started getting cut back as governments decided that they could not pay the services that needed to happen. And it is only through the public sector that we had a growing middle class. And the conversation that is going on right now is that we are losing our middle class. And we are losing the middle class because we haven't figured out how to effectively organize and support Black women in labor unions as we've moved forward. Black women sit at an interesting precipice in the conversation around what needs to happen. At the Ms. Foundation, we talk about things from this position of intersectionality, where all things come together. Well, Black women both meet a gender discussion, a race and ethnicity discussion, and an ongoing discussion around socioeconomic status, a discussion around civil rights, and we host this spot right now in this day and age. Black women have also continually voted in their best interest, which I will tell you, not all populations do. Black women have overcome systemic and structural barriers throughout unions, and we continue to bump our heads. This is not a naive conversation about that unions are all perfect and great and wonderful. Actually, we see unions as a partnership to moving this forward. At the Ms. Foundation, we've supported organizing for and around women of color and in and around those jobs that are segregated, particularly around Black women. Low-wage workers need unions more than anything else, and in fact, in the report, you will read that union organizing above education is the key way of raising wages and benefits. In a 2007 article on race, gender, and the rebirth of trade unions, unionism, it found that women of color have the highest election rates of any demographic group, the highest election rates, and that Black women organizing is critical and essential to making that happen. Women need other women in leadership, and in fact, we oftentimes want to elect women that look like us. We want them to be competent, we want them to have the skill sets, and we want them to do the job. Shifting populations means this is essential as more now than ever before. Not only do we have a demographic shifts going on within our own social, economic, political stance, but we also recognize that union numbers are down, income equality is up, retirement insecurity is as significant today as ever. There is a heightened level of poverty, and these conversations go on and on and on. And the one place through collective bargaining and other ways that this has been able to be counteracted has been through union organizing. And building unions is the key to strengthening not just African American communities, but the middle class and our country as a whole. I'm very excited about the conversation we're going to engage in today. I just want to read you one quick quote before we get started in our conversation from the authors of the document, And Still I Rise. They write, "We believe in the multifaceted nature of Black women's identity, their expertise as activists and organizers, and the urgency of their economic reality places them in the perfect position to lead new efforts to make these connections real, lasting, and capable of producing winning results." There are lots of really great pieces in this report, and I encourage you to read every word of it, but I thought that just said so much to the conversation. We're going to start off this morning talking with Kim, who has been living, eating, and breathing this report for over a year now, and congratulations and kudos to both you and Marc on this stunningly a beautiful piece. Are the pictures in this document just so... I believe a colleague said to me at one point,
The photographer knew how to take pictures of black women. So kudos to her. Kim, why don't you just start out by telling us a little bit about this report that you've been living, eating, breathing, who has been part of your core, and a little bit about what you learned in the document.
It would be my pleasure. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. This is the end of a very long journey that has been nothing short of a labor of love, and it is truly my honor to be on this panel with these amazing women. And I'm going to do my best to keep my remarks brief so that you can hear from them. Before we get started, I'd love to make a few acknowledgments. First and foremost, to two men, two brothers, who without their support, this report would not have been possible. The first is my brother, Marc Bayard, in the back, whose name has been mentioned. Thank you, Marc, so much. You are truly my brother from another mother. And to your lovely wife, Nicole, who's in Baltimore, who supports you so wonderfully and so strongly. I send my love to her as well. To my husband, Tracy Brown, I cannot tell you how much Tracy has put up with in the last few months particularly. Thank you, husband. Thank you for your love and support. I'd also like to thank two women. Let me just break it down for you. I'm a writer. All my life I've believed that, that words are one word is worth 1,000 pictures. This report really proves that the immortal words of whoever said a picture's worth 1,000 words. Could I please ask Jackie Hicks and Letitia Thornhill to stand up? This is our photographer and our makeup artist. The love and the care with which they took these pictures of these women totally embodied the spirit in which Marc and I embarked on this journey together. We can't thank you enough, and we think that because the report is so pretty, people will actually look at it and will read the words. So they were just such a vital part of our team, and we just truly honor and thank them. And then lastly, before I say a few remarks, I have to say I'm a deaconess at my church, Full Gospel Emancipation Center. Come on Sunday if you choose to. So I just have to give all glory to God because, like so many of the women who wrote this report said, this is a ministry, this is a calling. What they do within the labor movement goes beyond a paycheck. It goes beyond, there are so many things that it's so difficult really organizing. And so, I just want them to know that, I see them in the ministry that they do, and I have to give God the glory for their lives. And I pray for them every night as they go out and do what they do. So now let's get into what's in this beautiful report that we're all so proud of. What's in it are the words of women, 27 women from across the country in all different sectors of our economy, from all different sectors of our movement, some within traditional labor unions, others like Natalesia and her sisters in the Domestic Workers Alliance who are denied protections under the National Labor Relations Act. All of these women are women of the labor movement. In addition to the work they do on their 9-to-5 or as organizers, as directors of staff within unions, they are also out there doing amazing work as leaders of movements that we see on television every night, like Black Lives Matter, like the Moral Mondays Forward Together movement in North Carolina, that black women, wherever there is struggle, wherever there is injustice, wherever there is hope, there are black women who are working behind the scenes, often, working to make this world and our economy better. That's who the women in this report are. I would love to ask, because there are several women who are not on the panel who are in the book, would you please rise so that people can just acknowledge you? So please, in between panels, I would encourage you to talk to each and every one of them. They are amazing women to know. So now just a few brief remarks about the contents of the report. And before I do that, I have to say that, with everything that's going on in Baltimore, which my husband and I live about 20 minutes outside of the city, I was preparing to come to New York yesterday, and I thought to myself, every black man-child who is killed or profiled by police is a black mother's son. And those mothers are likely working moms who work hard and have dreams for their children. And it is on behalf of them that, I feel like I'm in the place that I am. And there's a story in the one of the narratives in the book makes reference to I think it's Alicia Garza's from Black Lives Matter and the National Domestic Workers Alliance. What most people don't know is that Trayvon Martin's mom, Sabrina Fulton, is a union member. She's a member of OPIU, the Professional Employees Union. Michael Brown's mother, Leslie McFadden, is a member of UFCW. And one of the most profound themes that emerged from the writing of this report is when we asked black women, both through the interviews and through the national survey that accompanied the interviews for over 450 black women, what they said when we asked them explicitly, what are the economic concerns of African American women? They said that social justice issues and race and gender equality issues are economic issues. They're inextricably linked to economic advancement. And, I think our times, the times in which we live are showing that in the past, where we've tried to focus exclusively on economic justice, it's not enough. It wasn't enough to protect these women from losing their sons, even though they did have good union jobs. So it's time, as Teresa alluded to, it's time for us to really look at our movements collectively, holistically, and really work in that intersectional space that black women occupy. Because if we start from that space, we will win. Because what we know to be true is that as black women are organizing, particularly other women of color, they are winning. So it is in that spirit that Marc and I really embarked on creating space for black women to speak for themselves about their experiences in labor. So as the video alluded to, the report is organized into three distinct sections around leadership, organizing, and politics. And policy issues, excuse me. And I want to tell you a little bit lift up just a few themes that emerged for your consideration and hopefully discussion on the panel a little later and with you in the audience. Under leadership, there are 4 key points that I think really stood out for us. The first is that black women are underrepresented in labor leadership. That's the obvious one, right? That although they represent 13.2% of union members, among those that responded to our national survey of black women in labor, less than 3% of the survey respondents reported holding elected positions within unions, and fewer than 5% reported serving as a president of a union. And guess what? It's not because black women don't want to lead, we do. We ask them. 65% of survey respondents stated that they aspire to become union leaders. And you know what? It wasn't out of an ego-centered place that they expressed that desire to be in leadership positions. They want to be in leadership because they so want to ensure that the voices of those who look like them have bearing on the way that unions make decisions about when and where they organize, how resources are allocated. They feel a responsibility to making sure that those voices are heard. The third point under leadership is that the labor movement does not have a leadership development problem. It has a leadership opportunity problem. We asked the women about that. Nearly 70% of them said that they feel like their unions are investing in the development of their leadership. However, about 50% of them said that there's just not enough places for that leadership to go. So the challenge now is to make sure that black women not only are trained up, but are put in positions to actually have agency and be a part of the decision making. And lastly, under leadership, black women want greater opportunities for connection and mentorship over and over and over again, we heard this from women, from Cleola Brown at the A. Philip Randolph Institute. I can't think of anyone who's mentored more women than Cleola Brown, making the point of mentorship being important, to rank and file union members that we spoke with. All want to be connected to other Black women, all want to be mentored. And mentoring is so important as a tool for advancement. Moving on to organizing, 4 themes emerged from the interviews and from the survey. First, Black women want to be organized. Over 70% of union members and 80% of the women that we interviewed and surveyed who are part of worker centers and other labor-affiliated organizations believe that Black working women would be receptive to organizing. And that yet they believe that unions are not investing enough in organizing Black women. Only 27% of our survey respondents believe that their unions are investing significant and sufficient resources in organizing Black women workers. As Teresa mentioned, Black women want to be organized by other Black women organizers. And it's not just about they want to see somebody that looks like them. Really beneath that is the desire to ensure that the organizers that come into their communities have a respect and an understanding of their experiences. Some of the survey respondents talked about not wanting to be judged, wanting to be listened to. And so, wanting to see Black women in positions of leadership as organizers is reflective of that. And lastly, in the organizing section, Black women require a specialized form of organizing. We're special. And when we asked the women about that, only 24% of survey respondents believe that the same skills and tactics for organizing white women workers would be effective on Black women. I was speaking with a reporter yesterday about this, and she was like, well, what do you think that's really about? Or do you think, why do you think Black women organizers have certain, need different skills? And I said, well, it's because the Black community, it's reflective of what the Black community wants and needs. That's why. And I was saying to her that what we heard over and over and over again is that the Black community has been promised so much and has received so little that there's often a high degree of distrust. You've got to show a certain degree of respect for their experience. You've got to know that if you're organizing workers, you've got to organize their families. You've got to organize their communities. So the responses that Black women organizers have crafted that are uniquely designed to organize other Black women come from that respect of responding to the needs of the Black community. Moving on to policy issues. Some of the top responses that we got to open-ended questions that we asked the women about, what were the top economic policy issues that they wanted the labor movement to pay closer attention to. There were a number. And there were 3 central themes or buckets that emerged. And the first is that Black working women want living wages, they want equal pay, and an end to income equality and other policies that enable them to be good workers and great moms. I really called it, the working moms economic policy agenda. So it came out in ways like survey respondents saying things like, we want wages, child care, and wage equality. They want fairness in scheduling so that they can prepare and have adequate child care. That there were a number of issues that they spoke about that fall into this theme of wanting to do really well on the job and wanting to be great moms at home. Secondly, the Black women profiled in the report and that we talked to through the online survey said that they want opportunities for upward mobility. That, while they are working hard in the jobs that they have, they want training, they want resources, they want mentorship towards taking themselves to the next level. Said one woman from the survey, we want training for more Black women to get into those higher positions. So she's already thinking about where she wants to go. And lastly, Black working women view race, gender, and social justice issues as economic justice issues, as I said at the beginning, and it bears mentioning twice because of where we are as a nation. They just draw these deep, inextricable links to the economic condition of Black women and how it's tied to what's happening in our community. Because as Teresa said, because Black women disproportionately are single heads of households, their income, their economic stability, their retirement security, that determines the community's security. So it's within that kind of like framing that they make these, that they draw these connections. In closing, I just want to reiterate why, one of the reasons why Marc and I felt so strongly about working on this report and what we hope will be, the beginning of a longer dialogue and action around some of the things that have been revealed through the report. And it's to say that this report, what this report is and isn't. So please carry this with you, as I'm sure you'll be asked questions about the report and why we did it. And Still I Rise is really a courageous and candid expression of Black labor women's experiences, aspirations, sometimes their disappointments, and their ideas about a way to move forward. And Still I Rise is a source of insights and recommendations on ways to create greater leadership opportunities for Black women in ways that help grow the labor movement. As Teresa mentioned, we're the lowest hanging fruit. When you talk about the fact that we have the highest labor force participation, when you talk about the fact that we have almost a 90% union election success rate when we organize each other. And when you talk about the fact that we are concentrated, unfortunately, disproportionately in low wage jobs in sectors of our economy, it's not rocket science to say why Black women can be organized, want to be organized, and will be organized by some of the amazing women that we have profiled in the report. And now what And Still I Rise is not. It is not a condemnation of the labor movement. Instead, it offers real insights, real concrete ideas about ways to encourage the labor movement to keep doing what it's doing very well, that has produced the women that you see on the panel and the women that are in the audience. And some of those things are mentioned in the report, such as the fact that there's not a single labor leader that we interviewed that said that she could have gotten where she was without the support of white women and white men who opened doors for them. So one of the recommendations is to encourage other white brothers and sisters in the labor movement who have the positional power to do so, to create space for other Black women who are ready to lead. So we wanted folks to know that it is in that spirit that Marc and I really invested in this report and creating this space, because the women in this room and the women in this report have to be heard. We think that they're a vital part of labor's future. So thank you so much for your interest in the report and in the work that these women do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. The report's great. The data in the report is really impactful and does tell a story, but I was hoping that Dr. Lewis would share with us a little bit of your story, given the fact that you come from a long line of union activists, union leadership, and here you are sitting, leading one of the largest group of medical unions in the country, and the largest, and just tell us a little bit about your experience and what that's meant to you.
Absolutely, sure. So first, so much gratitude. I'm like about to levitate off the stage here. Because I have, like the list of people to thank and the list of love and the list of doors that have been opened for me. And I could do that and take up the rest of the panel. I'm going to start with also acknowledging Cleola Brown, the president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, who I've seen mentor, sit with, and be a sister to everyone from Merle Evers to 16, 14, 13-year-old young women leaders. And to create that space and to feed me and to be with me in some tough times and to push me on leadership is unsung. unsung. And there are, I mean, you all can probably think of 15, 20, 30, hundreds of other women who, you know, are still in it, you know, because that's where the heart and the mission is. And so that's where I'm coming from today, acknowledging all of you, and all of you take that moment. I see you, Lauren, I see you, Erica, I see you, Nikki, I see all of us, I see you, Angela, you know, folks who, Carol, you know, all of you. I feel like romper room a little bit here, right? But like, that's really where I am. And Marc and Kim, you know, thank you for putting this out in the universe, because, you know, I am blessed, honored, and privileged to wake up every day thinking about how we make a difference in this world, how we open up space to make lives better, to empower. And that's not by accident. It is by, you know, I'm running the list in my head, Teresa, of all the women labor leaders in my life. And, you know, that 7-year-old story, that's just the first one I remember. You know, I'm sure there's a 3-year-old story and a 2-year-old story, because my mom got a union teacher's job right after she had me. You know, the story before was, you know, she was collecting a jar of coins to try to figure out how she was going to pay for gas to get to the hospital to have me. And then after that, got the union teacher's job, and there I was at 7, kind of as the teachers were on strike, passing out the sandwiches at the picket line, doing my homework outside of collective bargaining, you know, all my sister, mama, aunties around me, all my brothers and uncles as well. But like, I know that kind of, that leadership, that being of the black women leaders in labor in my family, from my mom, from my grandmom on my dad's side, mind you, was a union teacher in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the stories, the images of her are picketing around the barrel bonfires in Wisconsin for the rights and the voices of the teachers and the kids and the communities up there. And folks still know. One funny story about that, and we're all connected, right? So Diane Palmer is the president of SEIU Healthcare Wisconsin. She's a black woman public health nurse. She's also head of our Nurse Alliance. Diane Palmer was a grade school student in my grandmother's school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So, you know, so when people talk about the union, and where it's not this big, obscure, strange thing. It's not the purple letters. It's not whoever happens to be in whatever headquarters, shiny pack. It's not that. It's family, community, getting together. My mother, my grandmother, my aunties, my best friends, my sisters, my brothers. And so I'm glad we're talking about this today. I'm looking forward to the continual open and honest discussion, because there's a lot of brilliance there. There's been a lot of hurt, too. I'm thinking of all my sisters who, I mean, one of the really awesome things about being a female physician, social justice woman of faith, is that I feel like I have a duty to provide some space for healing for some of my sisters. And the stories I've heard, the deep hurt when they're not able to truly step into their mission, which isn't, you know, they don't take personally all the time, but really, like, I could really be contributing. Why won't people let me bring my brilliance to this game? Why are they seeing me and pushing me to the side? You know, I feel like if we can pull some things out of this open and honest dialogue, that, what did she say, the full color and full motion? I like that. I need a t-shirt that says that. The full color and full motion to, you know, all of the, you know, to spark all of the brilliance and give it space to fly. Then we can get beyond the kind of, we can get to something that's better and more than better. That's really pretty awesome and colorful and pretty too, because that's what Still IRAAS is about. But yeah, that's a little bit of my personal experience, and the union has been a part of me, again, since I was in the womb, and I will be dedicated to all of the black women who work and toil and labor and create and till the soil for more to thrive till my last breath.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah,
I'm going to move on only because I worry a little bit about myself getting just too engaged in each individual conversation. But I will say this, I think, the reality of how our families are entwined in this, right? This is who we are as a community, and I think we sometimes forget that, right? My aunt was a member of a teachers union, and I didn't know what her experience was, right? And so I'm moving up the ranks and doing the work that I'm doing, and I go to an event and I invite her to the event with me. I'm thinking I'm going to be the rock star on the panel. She walks in the room. My aunt's like 5'2", maybe when she's wearing heels. Walks in the room. She had been the lead organizer in her community, and I never knew that. It was part of who she was. It was part of her core, and it allowed her to raise my cousin and to send him off to college, and he is now a member of a local union doing his work. So it is what is inbred in us all the way through. Natalicia, I'd like to just go on to you for just a moment, and I've seen your work, I know your work, and I know your commitment. Your experience has driven you to where you are today, and I'd like you to share a little bit about why you think it's so important to have the collective voices of immigrant women of color, of immigrant Black women, of domestic workers to come together from your perspective.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to start by thank you all. Thank you, Marc. Thank Kimberly for inviting me, but most of all, thank Linda Berman. I met Linda for a while. Linda, can you please stand up? I might have to put you on the spot. From the National Domestic Workers Alliance, because the Alliance has created a space for us to think beyond ourselves, to be able to not just dream about it, but actually to be able to achieve. And as you said, I think for most parts, people are afraid of Black women, and they're especially afraid of Black women who are immigrants, right? They are bold, they are audacious, they don't speak English, and they don't care. So that's, it's like I have a mission, I'll make myself understood. You step in spaces that people say, what are you doing here? And you're like, I'm here to create change, And so I think that's what we are and who we are. It's that power that comes from within, of being Black, of being women, of being minority, of learning to multitask and doing so much with so little that we don't break easy, right? That we take our experiences and those tough ones and we transform into opportunities, into tools. So that happened to me before. Now you know what happened, and you can use that to create transformation. And that's why I'm part of this movement. I took something, my own situation, something that happened to me that was very difficult, and I decided that it had to become a tool for transformation, that it had to be more than just being, sad and broken down about that. That's not who we are. We don't have a space for that. Our lives, our community, society doesn't allow us as Black women, as immigrant women, to sit and then cry about bad things that happen to us. It makes us get up and do more, because that's how we have to be for our families, for our children, and for our community. We cannot afford to do that, right? So being part of the movement is really important, because the women, the most difficult part of this movement is that they are in isolation. They completely isolated. Many of them, they do not speak English. Many of them are undocumented. Many of them are really working really hard to keep their families together, to be able to provide for them, and also to hold on to the last thread of dignity that they have left. So if we don't do that, if we don't come together, we don't have anything else. We are already starving as we work. What else is there, right? If not, to really look for other people like us, or the women who are struggling, or the women who have the experiences. And when you talk about how you've been marginalized and how you've been underpaid and how you've been mistreated, they say, I know what you're talking about. I've been through that. And when you talk about being afraid for your children, for your children's future, they know what you are talking about. So how can we not build on that? How can we continue to think that we can do this alone? We know we can't. So we know that And the biggest part of the movement for me is to create changes, policy changes, because with the policy changes, it provides us opportunity to create culture change that it's way overdue. More so with everything that is happening around the country right now, with Ferguson, with Baltimore, and many other incidents that hits very close to home. And as you mentioned, many of us have children and we are single women because the system, the structure, the social structure has created this space where our men are not given the opportunity to thrive and to support the women. But also historically, we are known to be stronger, so society sort of tell us we're stronger and then create other barriers for us to fail. So we can't afford to fail, right? So we have to be stronger than the structure. So that's why I do this work, and that's why I will continue to do this work and continue to invite women with any time they have to do this and to join us and to talk about the issues and to share our stories, because together, as we share, we are stronger. We understand that we are not alone, and that absolutely will continue to do this. And the labor movement is especially an important place for us to be because it creates a structure, right? It creates intentional power and organizing so we can move the work. And as a Black woman, immigrant, of color, and all those things that you bring to the table, I didn't ask for permission to be part of this movement. I felt there was a call, and I sort of really joined and say, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere, and you're gonna have to understand me, and I'll make to be understood. But most importantly is to making sure that it's understand that we are a growing group of women and workers that need to continue to organize, become educated, enjoy the labor movement for changes that is going to last for generations, that's going to change the cycle of poverty for our children and our family, that's going to change society, that's going to change the way we think about women, that's going to change the way we think about the work that we do as domestic workers, workers that are more and more needed every day and will continue to grow. So, I can go on and on, so I'm just going to stop here. And I just want to say again that I'm very proud to be here, and I feel very honored to be heard and to be given the opportunity to continue to work at campaigns, but also, on culture shift, changing, the narrative, make it our own, make it part of the whole, not on a side. Thank you.
So Valerie, I'm going to move to you next. You're coming at this in a strategy format for a national strategy. And so I'd like to hear from you a little bit about some opportunities that you're seeing in the labor movement as you're setting up some of those strategies for the next round of getting women into leadership roles.
Very good. Thank you very much. This is a real extraordinary moment for me. As I was getting set down on the dais, I looked out into the audience, and Cleola Brown, I saw you, but you looked like you were trying to hide. And then, so now I've heard like 3 people mention Cleola Brown. Let me just say, I've been out of the labor movement, but not really far from the labor movement because I am about the labor movement. But Cleola Brown, early in my career, 27, 28 years ago, was a woman that I always looked up to because she was a woman we all went to. It's hard being a Black woman in the labor movement, and I'm going to shout out 2 more names here. I don't know where Robin is from UFCW. I come from the UFCW. Denise Perry, my very dear friend who was an organizer with me many years ago. For me, this is really about sisterhood because when you're in the movement, we take care of each other because there are many times when you just fall down and it's really hard to get back up. And that's been sort of my struggle throughout my entire career, first in the labor movement, then in politics, and now I'm in the nonprofit world. But I just want you to know that I'm going to make a jump back into politics when I announce that I'm running for Congress in Maryland's 8th Congressional District. I just want to say another theme that I'm hearing, not only through the stories that I've read and wept about in this book, is that our families are the core reason why we're all sitting here. My mother was a labor union activist and was the reason why I was forced, I said, at 16 to join the union, but it never occurred to me that my mother was a powerful union member and a leader in the local, and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the black population in the state of New Mexico was 2%. And my mother joined the union in 1968 and was a badass. And so I was always the shy and reluctant leader. I never wanted to lead, but I was inspired by other black women, and the first time I really understood what my calling was in Indianola, Mississippi, and probably, Denise, I don't know, 1989, 1990, when UFCW was trying to organize catfish workers in the Mississippi Delta, and they didn't have enough black women organizers. And so I was in another department doing women's work, and I got a call like, we need some black women in Mississippi. You're black and you're a woman, so go to Mississippi. So I went down there, and I remember coming back from that knowing that my life was never going to be the same as it was, because I remember hearing a sermon, and the preacher said, courage doesn't come from the mountaintop, it comes from when you're in the valley. And the women workers I met in Mississippi were truly in the valley, but lifted me up as the leaders that I strive to become. And so I didn't answer your question, but I had to set it up that way by saying, in a national context, what I bring to the work that I'm doing at the Center for Working Families and what I brought to politics when I was an elected official was it never left me that who I am. And I always write, I wrote it down here, remember who you are. Who I am is Lorraine and Henry's daughter, from a long line of people who struggle every single day. And I love you, Kim, so much for allowing me to be part of this project, because I remember the story I told about the jar of pennies. And Denise knows, because she used to babysit my 2 boys who are grown men now, and I struggled as a single mom. That never leaves me. So my policy work is about those people who are like me, struggling every day, doing the best that we know how to do to raise our children, to love God, to love their country, to grow up to be upstanding citizens. But we have all these barriers in our way. That jar of pennies, I still have a jar of pennies, and I would save those pennies to make sure that I had gas at the end of the month. We all know how to rob Peter to pay Paul. And as a policymaker, when I was on the dais as the only black woman elected in my county ever, I had to keep bringing those conversations back. But what about? So my legislative platform was always about women and children. And so in my work in Working Families, I just elevated that nationally to try to focus on those issues that were all about working families. And when I become a member of Congress, I will do the same thing. So I just want you to know, like, so the union never leaves you. I answered your question by saying that. The union never leaves you, and who you are is what this is all about.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Perry, I'd like to turn towards you for a moment, because I think you insisted that it be heard that you were bringing a different perspective to the table, and how important that is. And I'd like to have you share with all of us today a little bit about what that was about in changing the conversation and the importance of having black women and their connection to the community as you were looking to kind of preserve union jobs in Ohio.
Thank you so much. As women, I think that we do the work and we keep it moving, right? Excuse me. We don't really think about how history will tell our story. And so I'm really thankful for Kim and Marc, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, and the entire team for bringing focus to black women in the work that we do. I too want to give a special shout out to Letitia and Jackie, who glammed us up and made us look like we were all of that. in terms of perspective, I'm reminded of a campaign, the 2011 campaign, when our governor in the state of Ohio sought out to strip the collective bargaining rights away from public employees. And also 2 states away in Wisconsin where their governor was doing the same thing. And I can remember looking at the hundreds of thousands of people who were coming to the Capitol every day to protest. But I was also struck by the lack of diversity that we saw in those earlier protests. We saw on the lawns, mainly white men coming out to protest. And I was proud that labor came out and protested, because they should. This was about an attack on their rights at work. But I was also struck about how do we get this issue to be more than just about labor. And that was how that campaign in 2011 got turned around. Because when you first looked at the policy of the elimination of collective bargaining rights for public employees, the policy appeared to be race neutral. But when you look closer, of the 360,000 public sector workers that were under attack in Ohio, 20% of those workers, or 1 in 5 African Americans. I knew that that was a hook that we needed to start to put out in the public arena. The unions were using polling in the campaign to talk about it as an attack on police, fire, teachers, and nurses, and it was. But as a black woman, I knew it would be difficult to try and mobilize communities where there was high unemployment, higher than the general public population. I knew it would be difficult to get those workers excited about saving the jobs of police, fire, teachers, and nurses. And if we had to do that today, Lord help us, right? Because we know that our community would probably be in a completely different place. And so using the platform that I had as the first woman to hold a position inside of the state AFL-CIO, one of the principal officers, getting those white men predominantly who are around that table to understand we can't just keep this in the union lane. We have to get out and talk about this whole campaign differently. And so we were able to get a nuanced message from the campaign, which meant they had to spend some resources to try to do some focus groups and some polling so that they could understand in their world how to talk about this issue. And we came up with some messaging, and we nuanced the message to those community leaders. We talked with faith leaders and reminded them about the fact that it was Dr. King who was in Memphis in support of collective bargaining rights for sanitation workers. We talked to the NAACP and there's all of their unions, and we just asked a simple question. And it was how many of them had a relative or someone in their family who worked for city, county, state, or the school system, and the response was very high. We asked Black Greek letter organizations and the Masonics and historical civic leaders in our community, and it was them who became the messengers about how this issue was going to impact in their community. We were okay with the message of police, fire, teachers, and nurses, but most of the people that we were trying to reach didn't see themselves as this was an issue that was impacting them, because those folks were school bus drivers, they were cafeteria workers, they worked in the city sanitation department, and family services and other state agencies. So the campaign, we had to kind of shift the campaign and get some other kind of messengers to kind of carry forward the message. And we began educating even before the campaign gave up any money. And how this all kind of came about, I read an article before the campaign got launched in the Root Online article titled "Gutting Unions Hurt the Black Middle Class." And what it talked about was the legislators who left the state of Wisconsin and went into hiding so they wouldn't have to vote on this very terrible legislation. But that article also had lots of statistics in it about the fact that public sector really helps the African American community. It was their ladder out of poverty. We started out the campaign in Ohio with about 60% of black people opposing the issue, but this is how it ended, which was really exciting. And it was a testament to the work of being able to create space at the table for unions to resource messengers in the community to actually carry the message out into the community in a way that black voters would be able to resonate. We knew that union members would overwhelmingly reject the issue, and they did, 86-14. For non-union members, the margin was a little closer, but they rejected the issue too, 52-48. 73% of voters in households with a public employee in it voted no. Independent voters rejected the issue. The greatest margin of defeat, though, was with African American voters who understood after a targeted message that we were able to get to them because we used our position, and I insisted that the labor movement not do business as usual in terms of how they were going to message this issue. And we had a campaign that was targeted on the doors and the pulpits and the barbershop. I don't know if we would have gotten there had we not been in the room to even raise the question of a different kind of message that needs to go to the community. Because when you have a majority of leaders who are sitting around the table and they have a universal way of doing things, and they don't consider that there may be another way, another perspective that they can do the work around, I'm not so sure that we would have gotten there because we had to remind them it's not just about police, fire, teachers, and nurses. It's also about who rides on the back of a refuse truck, and that job was also a job that is worth saving. So as we, and where this comes from for me is that I'm always looking through the lens of what I see every day in my life, right? I see, coming from a strong family, my grandmother was union, my dad was union, and so I know the benefits of these policies, but what I see in my position every day is that the leaders of labor don't always embrace a more broader way of thinking about how we win strategies and what we do for the broader movement. And so as a black woman, I'm very proud of the work of the labor movement. I've been inspired by so many women who've helped me along the way in terms of this, who've been a support mechanism, and hope that this report will enable many more of us to be able to continue to do the work, and that it will create more spaces for people like the women that are profiled in the report and the hundreds that are waiting to take on leadership roles and be up here the next time. So thank you so much for this report.
So you said something that was really very interesting. I'm going to give everybody a second out there to think about if you want to say something, because I'm going to turn the floor over to you in just a moment. But before we go there, one of the things that you said was, or one of the things you insinuated, which I think is very true, which is we can't just have a seat at the table, you have to bring your voice to the table. And you have to speak loudly, right? We heard that several times. So I actually want to go back to Dr. Lewis and ask you to just give us an example or two of something that the union should continue to do to support black women in leadership.
A thing or two or three or four. I was thinking about the seats at the table, and that's one of the things I wrote down as well, because, I've been in these meetings where, sometimes I'm the only person of color, and we'll hear all these anecdotes about how people found brilliance. Like there's always some folksy, amazing woman that was in the middle of this who knew everything and she helped to win the campaign. But it's like, so then that means she's brilliant, right? And she should be helping us with our strategy going forward, right? That means we should do more than put a picture of her on a website, I'm just saying. So, So I think, it's incumbent among those of us who have seats at the table to not only continue to yell about that and call out that blind spot, because it really is. I mean, some of it's clamoring for credit, some of it's a little bit of Columbusing, some of it's just not knowing, not understanding that that's just a different type of genius than what you have. But the more we call that out when we see it, that like, okay, so that 90%, that campaign worked because those people had an amazing strategy. Ergo, can we not try to reinvent the wheel on the next campaign and just grab the people who did it right the first time and the second time and the third time and for the last 20 years? So sometimes it is, I've been in SEIU for 10 years. I applaud and bow to folks who have been in the labor movement for 30, 40, 50 years dealing with this, but I said that 30 years ago. But that's kind of the journey, right? You have to keep saying it and sometimes redirect. But for those of us that have the ability to create committees or call out that piece of the Constitution that says we should establish a blah, 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 or put lines in our budget, or allow for different ways for us to have structures that can have deciding and moving power, we should do that. But at the least, continue to speak up and shine a light on those disconnects. And it's funny because I'm thinking about like this moment right now, because I know just even in my social media feed, like there's everything that's going on in Baltimore, what's going on, like we're talking about community organizing and community health, and then there's a kind of who's ready for whatever presidential candidate, and it seems like big disconnect. If we can inject like the brilliance of our strategy in that moment and driving it, we could do that. That's what I would love to hear from all of you all and all the people on the panel. How do we make people know that the solution to figuring out how we make things better is bringing that strategic brilliance, and that to the table?
Well, she's just posed a question to all of you. I know I don't have the answer, but I do think I think it's absolutely the right question. I mean, Jada Pinkett Smith, right, was criticized for challenging whether Hillary Clinton could bring a perspective of women and black women and women of color to the table. And then she was criticized for criticizing or even asking the question. And we have to just ask the question and let people figure out what the answer might be for them. But we have only about 15 minutes left, so we really have about 10 minutes left. Okay, we only have about 7 minutes left, but we'd like to open the floor for anybody who'd like to tell us their story, share their story, or ask a question. And so just raise your hand, and the famous Sharon has her microphone ready. Oh, right up here in the front row. Oh, where? Right up here. Green dress.
And you don't have to give your name.
Okay. I don't think as a white woman, I understand that my story is different, but I just wanted to say that I teach at a labor school. I teach union electricians. It's mostly men, and the women who are in that trade are really incredible. And so I wanted to create something because I had different female friends who worked at different labor unions who didn't necessarily know each other, and there was this difficulty in rising to leadership. So right now it's just a Google group with like 100 women in New York City, but if anyone's interested, it's called Ladies of Labor. And because my experience as a white woman, I would love for more women of color to be involved so that we can tackle this issue head on. So if anyone's interested, please see me or talk to me, and I would love to help get us connected.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Ladies of Labor. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Upchurch. I'm with the Young, Gifted, and Black Coalition for the People out of Madison, Wisconsin. And I just want to appreciate just the awesome brilliance that's in this room, on this panel, and that I've been surrounded with this trip, this weekend. I'm very humbly grateful. And I do have questions, but I just wanted to express that gratitude. I believe that this coming together is what really will get us to where we want to be eventually. Really quickly, in the circle that I'm in, there's a lot of queer leadership, women leadership, and I get coached all the time on male privilege and patriarchy and how that shows up. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that, for somebody that wants to learn. Also, when you were developing, these issues are so multifaceted and intersectional. How did you focus? How did you hone in, or do you focus on just this specific narrow strip, or how do you interact with the other pieces of this very intricate puzzle? Find us on the internet. I got to give a shout out, y'all. Sure, yeah. YGBcoalition.org. We're fighting state violence. Sign our petition. We're having the UN come and do an investigation on racial disparities in Madison, Wisconsin, which is the home of the sharpest racial disparities in the nation. Check us out. Love and peace, y'all.
Thank you. Does anybody, there's one question over here, and as you're walking that way, does anybody want to respond to this young man's question? Thoughts? Valerie?
I know you don't really want me to answer.
Oh, yes, I do.
I'm going to try to hone in on the question you asked about male privilege. The labor movement is rife with that, but so are all movements, from what I can see, because I've been around a few of them myself. And it's very frustrating to know, especially progressive men, who you think should know better, are sometimes the worst perpetrators. Because we have high expectations for our brothers on the left, right? And when they fall, we think, well, where are we going to go if they don't get it? So I think you have to take it on organization by organization, and working families. This is how I actually know Kim Freeman Brown, because in her role as a brilliant coach and organizational development person, has come inside our organization, and we've created a caucus. Who would have thought that working families would need a people of color caucus? We have one, and it's pretty awesome. And so you have to go into your own backyard and clean that mess up before you can really be like progressives working together to build power for working people in this country. Where I come from are unions. I'm a rank and file union member. I had to fight it in my local. I went to the international. I had to fight it in the international. So wherever I go, that is there staring us down. And so I think this is a real struggle for us as women of color and just people who want to do right in the movement. We have to tackle that, and it's not easy.
I was just going to say, when you're shoved into the margins, you just make the margins work, right? I mean, had we not done the work that we did around the African American vote on that campaign, I'm not sure we would have gotten there. So for me, it's like when you're pushed to the margins and that's the only lane that you find yourself in, you make the margins work, because the margins do make the difference in the outcome. And so, I found a lot of gratitude in just kind of, that's a space no one else is occupying, so I get there, I occupy the space, I make the difference in that, while at the same time continuing to bring attention in the majority that, we have to have different voices. We have to have a diversity of voice, but you can still do good work even though the odds are against you.
Go ahead.
I think the second part of your question had to deal with how do you focus. And I'm going to address it from a different way, because I think sometimes focus is given a very narrow, specific, what is, line 3B of your strategic plan for the next 10 years. And from studying the women that I love and appreciate and just, my own kind of self-study, it's really about staying grounded and knowing what your own voice and purpose is in this space. And making sure that you really, really work to build that beloved community around you. Because then, honestly, the focus, like where you're supposed to add your genius, it may not be what the headline is. Yours may be health or justice or black men or boys or schools or technology or, but no one can tell you what your purpose is besides you and wherever your space is. So the more you kind of build, from the mind, body, spirit, core and that beloved community around it, and make sure you take time to breathe and stay grounded, then it'll come. Don't worry about somebody else's plan. It'll come. And that's just it's a different way of thinking about focus, but I would share that with you. I just did. Yeah.
All right, last question.
Thanks. Thanks so much to the panel and to the organizers today. So I have kind of a short two-part question. There are many ways that Black women participate in the labor force, and through unions is, obviously one of them. And my very specific question to you all is, what are your recommendations in terms of kind of very specific policies that unions at different sectoral levels need to be engaged in to make sure that the policies are more gender friendly? So whether these are policies about childcare, we know that unions help close the wage gap, sexual harassment on the job, and amongst all the trades, which we know actually exists, that will actually make unions a more attractive venue for entry and advancement for a younger class of women or younger group of women. And whether or not in your own experiences, again, you saw models of not necessarily just the mentorship, which all of you have spoken a lot about, which I think is important, but more formal models for how to kind of attract young people in the first place, keep them in, and then deal with advancement issues within unions as kind of one entry into the workplace and as an organizing space for young people. Thanks.
Great. I'm going to start with Kim on that one, I think.
If you turn to the back of the report, there are a series of recommendations that speak to a number of the elements of your question. I think that one of the recommendations being that labor, Black women in labor, women's organizations, civil rights groups, environmental justice groups, that they have to come together. All of them work on a women's economic agenda and elements and policies like the ones that you mentioned. I think, the more that they can utilize the position that Black women sit in, right at the heart of the intersection of all those different movements, the more that I think that those movements will begin to work together and aggregate enough power to actually win on them. To your point about young women, I would answer that in two ways. The first is an invitation for young folk to learn more about, to see themselves in the women that are represented in the report, because historically, Black women have always used the labor movement as a way to advance themselves economically, to protect themselves from workplace discrimination and racism. And I want to make sure that our younger sisters know that the labor movement still exists as a strategic tool for them to use towards those same outcomes. And I think that the more that we can ensure that they see not Alicia's, they see the Petey's, the Tony's, the Valerie's, the Alicia Garza's, the Robin Williams, the Naomi Walker's. There are so many women in the labor movement who are young and who are doing it. And that part of our challenge is to make sure that they're more visible. One of the other recommendations in the report is we've got to make these women more visible as thought leaders and strategists, not just for the benefit of the labor movement, but for the benefit of the broader progressive community, so that people know that that's a pathway that they can follow, and that there's an opening that's being created for them not to just follow, but to bring their perspective.
All right, with that, I'm going to have to wrap up because I promised Marc I would keep us on time today. But join me in thanking this amazing panel that's been with us today. I just want to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think it is critical for us to see ourselves. And so if you can't see it, you can't be it is said. And what this book has done, what this report has done, is allow us to see it and to understand that the path to getting to where we are, wherever that happens to be, is not always the straightest of lines, and that we're jumping through lots of hoops to get there. And so, well, still IRAAS is the name we continue to place our feet on the ground every day. And so before I turn the microphone over and we go into our lunchtime presentation, I just want to remind us all that I have a quote that sits on my computer. It says, "Be the kind of woman that when your feet hit the ground in the morning, the devil says, oh, she's up." So I encourage us all to be that person. Thank you very much.